you have to believe in yourself, because not everybody's going to see your vision. And that's how I want to portray. I want to leave a legacy, but I want to start by doing something where I can help people, because I've always had this desire to help people as much as I possibly can. Fail faster. I saw that and I was like, that's so very true. I think a lot of times we're scared to fail. It's unknown. Therefore, we are overthinking. Instead of just let your thoughts be and kind of follow your instinct, because
all right, welcome to the Fit Vegan Podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life, and this is what the show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Torre Washington, who's a vegan IFBB Pro Bodybuilder. Torre, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm excited that we get to record a podcast together. I know we've connected quite a few times throughout the years. Planted Expo in its origin in Vancouver, I think with Dom and John was over there as well. Johnny Juicer was there too.
Yep.
Yeah, haven't seen him in a while. I know he's in LA too, right?
Yes. And anytime I'm out there, I look him up and we catch up as much as we can.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll have to text him. I'll have to reach out to him. So today I want to talk, man, about obviously veganism and bodybuilding, which are two of the things that you're known for. So let's just dive into it. What came first for you? Was it veganism or bodybuilding?
So I was raised vegetarian.
Yeah.
So being raised vegetarian, it was basically within my upbringing and DNA to always lean more towards plants. Now, bodybuilding came into my life probably when I was very young, within middle school, because I basically had a lot of, that upbringing where you're around kids who pick on you, and they pick on you based on certain things that they find different than what they're used to. And this caused me to seek an outlet. And the outlet was superheroes, and wanting to have the strength of these superheroes to be able to intimidate bullies, what have you, from actually wanting to, mess with me or pick with me. And once I started watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I started seeing his movies, and then I recognized the fact that how he was able to build his physique like that to look like a quote unquote superhero was through bodybuilding. And so I decided to pick it up, and I started studying and reading as much about bodybuilding as I could, just to be able to look like that. And so it came after I was vegetarian, but it came before I started. It came a little bit prior to me going full vegan, because I was in middle school, high school. But then once I went to college, I kind of gave up the whole competing part, and I just continued to work out. So I was an avid gym goer for a while. Yeah. But prior to that, I was looking into possibly competing while I was in high school, but it never manifested in that manner. So,
yeah. What was the original superhero that you're looking up to, that you're like, man, if I could look like that, if I could have those superpowers?
Superman, of course.
Yeah.
And then Wolverine. Wolverine was like that alter ego where Wolverine really didn't take no ish. But Superman was that good old boy, but he was so strong where he just held back because he didn't really want to hurt anybody. So it was both of them that I pretty much, wanted to have that super strength, but I also loved the agility and the tenacity that Wolverine brought as well.
Yeah. So it's like that humbleness with like, I can mess you up, but I won't, because I'm humble.
Correct.
I'm going to contain myself.
And that's the thing. I wanted to be able to, like, if people were going to say something to me, I just hit a brick wall and make a hole in it and say, you might want to keep moving.
Yeah. Yeah. And so obviously you mentioned like Arnold was one of those initial people that kind of edge you into the world of bodybuilding, what are some of the uh, icons that you looked up to as kind of you got into the world? Because it was a great era to go into bodybuilding when you did. So I'm curious, like, who you looked up to in that regards.
So it's interesting because Arnold Schwarzenegger was that kindling to light the fire that started me into bodybuilding. But then I started just looking at. I didn't really have any true icons, but the guys that I really watched were like Sean Ray, you know,
Yeah.
Vince Taylor, Flex Wheeler, and most of those guys. And what was the interesting thing about it is that I met some of them in person, but they were larger than life to me because they were these big bodybuilders. And here I am, this little kid, and I'm seeing these guys in the gym. I'm like, wow, not recognizing the fact that how much drug use or whatever goes on when to get that size, because I
Yeah.
was pretty oblivious to all of that information. I was really into just eating and lifting weights without taking anything, no supplements, what have you. So my only real icon when it came to bodybuilding was Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I figured he was the epitome of where bodybuilding could take you if you truly believed in yourself. And so, but I love studying the other guys and watching them and seeing them compete. I would go to shows as much as I possibly could, because I was
Yeah.
living in South Florida at the time, and down here there's a lot of competitions that go on. So I even paid attention to the women like Corey Everson and all of them, Linda Murray, watching them build their physiques and just look phenomenal. And so I studied as much as I could of everybody's different regimens that they went through when it comes to training for their specific body parts.
Yeah. So was that more in the era where it was more still aesthetic physiques, or where it transitioned to more like mass monsters, right? You think of like the Phil Heath, Jay Cutler kind of days.
Yeah, so it was more the aesthetics, because
Okay.
I think the mass actually came when Dorian Yates came on.
Yeah, he definitely
Then it
brought
was
that to the
like,
stage.
just get big, and then Ronnie Coleman, and then the Jay
Yeah.
Cutlers, and it's like, and it started to change.
Yeah.
'Cause I
Wasn't it
remember
as
I really
aesthetic
didn't pay attention
anymore?
to it then.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
they were there, I never really paid attention to it as much as I used to.
Yeah. And so when you started bodybuilding, did you do the typical um like dirty bulking? Was that a thing when
No,
you just
I
did like
was
lean bulking?
I didn't do that at all, because I was very keen on, first of all, performing properly, meaning I was very much keyed into the mechanics of bodybuilding, the movements.
Yeah.
So I didn't want I did things to prevent injury. Secondly, I love looking lean and looking as if I could step on stage. And then I
Yeah.
also started doing track and field at the same time. And so that really leaned me up even more. And I remember people asking me in the gym, "Are you going to compete?" And I was thinking to myself, no. But it's because I was so lean that they assumed that I was getting ready for a competition, having no idea how to do that back then. But I never had that dirty bulk. And then, or where I never really focused on doing that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
If it happened only because I was just enjoying the eating phase and just working out. But it wasn't
Yeah.
because I was specifically doing it for the purpose of putting on size to build more muscle so that I can cut down on a show differently. I never truly understood that process because I didn't really get into the competition aspect of bodybuilding until later on.
Yeah, which is smart on your side. It's a lot better to be lean than to just be fat and strong, and then you got to lose like 40 pounds. It's the cut's a lot harder once you do that.
Oh
So
my
I'm
God.
assuming that when you do muscle building phases now, you tend to stay pretty lean, and you just have to make some little tweaks when it's time to compete.
Yeah, and lean for me is, I guess, 10 to 15 pounds above the weight that I am on stage. So for example,
Yeah.
I'm usually, once I lean down, I usually get down to about 157. That's where I'm fully really shredded. And then we
Yeah.
fill back up with carbs and what have you. And I'm usually on stage between 162, 164. Right. So,
Okay.
well, 160, 162. And so I typically off season sit around 174, 175.
Okay.
So that's not much. And to me, that's a lot, because I don't like how it looks. But
Yeah.
people look at me and think, "Man, you're so lean. You look good." But that's the average person. To
Yeah.
my eyes, I'm looking at myself. I love the way I look when everything is popping out. But I do understand that it's a little difficult. I wouldn't say it's impossible because I know people that do maintain that leanness year round, and are able to survive like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Once you compete, it kind of becomes your standard of what lean
Yes.
is. Like a normal person, lean is, 10, 12% body fat. But to a bodybuilder, you're like, nah, when I'm shredded on stage, that's what's lean in my head. So that's a
Mhm.
point of comparison from now
Yes.
on. Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes that's why we go through that whole body dysmorphia because we love how we look when we're stage ready, or even a couple of days or a week after the stage, because you fill out a little bit, but you're still pretty shredded, but you're a
Yeah.
little bit bigger because now you're eating a little more, but you still have some of those cuts.
Yeah. If you're cool with it, let's talk about that because a lot of the guests I have on are not deep into the world of bodybuilding. I did a podcast with Corinne and we talked a little bit about like competition, but it's like when I did my bodybuilding show, same thing, got super shredded and you're applauded for how lean you are, and then you have like your indulgence after you're done competing, and then the next few days you fill up, you're like, damn, I look great. If I would have looked like this on stage, it would have been different. Would have been a different outcome. But then as you continue to eat that way, yeah, you put on a little bit more weight. So how do you personally deal now versus when you first started competing with like that weight gain that comes post competition? Because I imagine you deal a lot better with it now.
So it's interesting because what you mentioned prior to this question, I don't have that anymore where I look better the day after. I look better. I look great on the day of the show
Yeah, you
because
timed yourself.
yeah, we eat into the show. So that way,
Yeah.
typically, I'll be honest with you, after the day after the show, I'm not as hungry. Or even the night of the show because I've eaten so much to fill out and look how I should look on
Yeah.
stage. But when it comes to the later on, when you continue to eat, and if you continue to eat in that manner, because you got to think about it, scientifically, the metabolism suppresses itself once you start to drop your calories.
Yeah.
And then once you increase them, if you just increase them very drastically, the metabolism hasn't caught back up. It hasn't
Yeah.
gone back up to balance out the amount of food that you're putting into your body. So if you do it too fast, you put on adipose tissue or excess fat or excess water, and then if it just continues, and you continue to do that, the body has no time to catch up to it. So the way we offset that now is you got to reverse into those calories you were at prior to competition. It's a
Yeah.
long process. It's a slow process, and it's not fun because
You
you're
want to eat
you're
more.
thinking, man, I'm done competing. I can just eat. But if
Yeah.
you really want to do it right, you take your time getting back to that maintenance calories where your body is able to utilize it efficiently and keep you looking pretty good.
Yeah. How long do you reverse diet for typically after a show?
I say it take about, if I'm being honest, I don't really do it as long as I probably should. I probably do 3 weeks, three, four
Okay.
weeks, and then I'm back on it. But my metabolism is still pretty good where I can hold it for a while, you know.
Yeah.
But you you see those indulgences, you're like, oh man, I can get a
Yeah.
cheesecake right now. I can get this right now. I can eat this right now, and it's almost like a domino effect, just one after the other. You go into different restaurants and what have you. You can get up and snack versus when you're hungry, you just go to bed. Now
Yeah.
I can eat. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's usually 3 to 4 weeks.
Delayed gratification is tough post competition to reverse diet.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Dr. Lane Norton, right? For
Yes,
reverse
yes.
dieting.
That's where a lot of my information comes from because I was around when he was way back in the day, starting with all of us in the natural bodybuilding world and that prep, because the archaic style of cutting water and no salt and doing all of this different stuff to get to look a specific way. What we realize is that wasn't even necessary, because
Yeah.
you know I think a lot of it came from, when you take the drugs, kind of enhance that process so fast that you feel
Yeah.
like that's what you needed to do in order to get that look. Whereas once we learned that you didn't need that, because like you said, the body looks, some people would do it, look so dry and shredded on stage, and then the next day after eating, they look better because they were more full, they look
Yeah.
bigger, and they were just as shredded. And they were like, man, I always look better the day after. And it tends to happen to mostly bikini girls because they're really not truly eating that much on the day of the show, because they don't want to have their stomachs full of food or what have you. And
Yeah.
they're not flexing. They just have to look good. So
Yeah.
when they eat the next day or the night after the show, they tend to look more vascular and the pump is huge and they look bigger and more full, but that's not what they want on stage at the time. So
Yeah, I wish I would have timed my shit differently when I did my competition for sure. I remember like my coach was crushing nitric oxide pills into like Nutella on rice cakes. And he was giving me like some type of like green tea diuretic. He's like, dude, go to the bathroom, go pee. And I cut my waters before.
oh
And I
my
was like, I mean, I was peeing by the drops. He's like, every drop counts, man. He's like, just go to the bathroom. It was a terrible experience. It wasn't fun. So hey, I'm happy that now people have discovered a much better way to do this. Because man, I was pissing by the drip, and he was like, "Dude, every drop counts. Got to get you like tight and shredded for the show."
wow. I never heard that before.
Yeah, he was a well. Now looking back, he was a big juice monkey, and he wasn't public about it. And so I guess the methodology changes if you add drug to the mix, right? So yeah, probably that's why I didn't have that much of a great experience the first time. So Um, dude, curious, I wanted to ask you some questions like how do you structure a fat loss for competition? Because again, we get making someone lose 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds, good. It's fairly easy to kind of do that. But that last like 5 to 10 pounds to get the body to look sharp on stage. And we already talked about the timing, how I messed it up. Most people mess it up. They look better a few days after the show. Like, how do you structure nutrition? And is it the usual that you would hear of like, hey, we just have to cut out all your carbs so we can kind of like drain your glycogen system and then kind of reload it before competition? Like, I'm curious kind of what's your approach to it?
Well, you know, what we tend to do is it's kind of what you just mentioned as far as the glycogen depletion, but we never cut carbs zero. I think
Okay.
I get low, but I don't get to a point where it's, super low. And if it's super low, it's like, let's say 65 grams of carbs per day. That's typically for a short period of time,
Yeah.
right? Because because since we've started, we kind of drop it slowly, so every 5 to 10 grams of carbohydrate loss in the macronutrient setup does make a difference. You can see it. It changes
Yeah.
because it's just a gradual decrease, and so that's what we tend to do. So that last usually the last 5 pounds, because most people are on stage, and if they had 5 pounds less, they would look phenomenal. And I think sometimes they
Yeah.
don't recognize that. So
Yeah.
it's it's really cool that you're saying 5 pounds, because 5 pounds usually makes the difference between someone being spectacular versus just good.
Yeah.
So that 5 pounds can come from just making sure you're getting that 8 to 9 or even 9 to 10 hours of sleep, which is so crucial to fat loss, especially in that timing, because the body is at a point where it's, I don't even want to call it a starvation mode, but it's in a mode where the metabolism has been suppressed in order to make make up for the calories that you're bringing in, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really just a almost not like a troubleshooting of, do we change up the carbohydrate intake? Do we add in a little bit more extra, a little cardio? Because we use cardio as a tool, not a necessity. So
Yeah.
cardio, like for example, I'm about 12 to 13 weeks out from my first show this year, and I'm not
Yeah.
doing cardio really. I'm just, it's all about my macronutrient intake. And so, and my training. And so once we get
Yeah.
to a point where we feel like the weight loss is stalling, then we start to include cardio, which is just a tool to assist in the process of getting that last bit of fat off or pounds off.
Yeah. I love that you say that because a lot of people are trying to use it as the main tool to kind
Yes.
of for the fat loss. And I always point out to like, let's just look at someone like you versus an endurance athlete. Like one is primarily cardio focused, one is primarily strength focused, completely different physiques at the end of the day. Obviously, we talk about bodybuilding and competing. I'd love to talk about like your veganism journey. Like at what point did you go from vegetarian to vegan, and what was the original reason why?
So, of course, like I told you, I was raised vegetarian.
Yeah.
And being raised vegetarian, it was really out of my mom's religious choice, which was Seventh-day Adventist. And so, Seventh-day Adventists, specifically in that time, really were focused on the aspect of the health message. And I know now a lot of things have changed where people don't even consider that. They just figured, hey, God blessed all food so we can eat it all, right? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So once we moved from Alabama to Jamaica, lived in Jamaica, went to high school. Well, I went to some schooling there in Jamaica. And I was there for about almost 3 years. And so returned back to the States, and then that process returned to South Florida. So South Florida, we were still following the Seventh-day Adventist church system, and then I started going to public school. So then that kind of changed. And
Mm.
living in Jamaica, of course, I got to understand a little bit about Rasta, but Rasta back then was really not something people enjoyed until Bob Marley kind of made it a little bit more popular and brought attention to Jamaica. Before that, Rastas were not good. They were not considered good people. They would almost shoot them just on spot because they considered them evil and what have you.
Okay.
But the Rastafarian lifestyle promoted, again, eating from the earth, and specifically the Rastas that live more off the grid per se. And so a lot of me and my friends, they were also Jamaican. We live in high school. We started to look more into the lifestyle, and I remember studying more about it and realizing that, oh, these guys don't eat anything that's considered flesh, animals, right? But a lot of my friends still did. They were eating chicken and what have you. And I decided to say, you know what? If I'm going to call myself Rasta, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to go all out and do it the right way. And so I decided to make the dietary change. I say dietary change, even though it's not a diet, but I made it to so where I was eating only things from the earth, like plants, fruits, and what have you. And this is what started me on that journey because I had never heard of the term vegan.
Okay.
It's not until I remember, this story sticks out to me because I never understood that vegan encompassed a lot more than just what you consume via food.
Yeah.
It was in respect to animal liberation, not wearing leather, making sure that, things like this. And so I remember going to a veg fest in Atlanta because I was living in Alabama at the time and I was wearing Timberlands. Timberlands are, boots that the typical wear in New York, but they're made from leather. And
Yeah.
I didn't think about that because to me, I just wanted to not eat animals.
Yeah.
And so, and then when people said, "Oh, you're vegan," I was like, oh, "Okay, I guess that's what I am." But I didn't realize that it was more than just what you ate. And so when I went to this veg fest, I was standing in line for a Caribbean dish, and this lady in the line said, "Man, I like your boots." She said, "Are they vegan?" And I looked at her cross-eyed, like, "What? I'm not
Yeah.
gonna
Boots
eat them. So
vegan.
what are you talking about? Are my
Yeah.
shoes vegan?" So, and then it just made me like look into it more. I was like, "Oh, okay." But I also realized that I couldn't tell someone to throw away stuff that they already bought and now they turn. But some people do. Some people get rid of it.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, you already bought it. It's already part of your, your household. So you throw it away, you just actually creating landfill problems because it's not going to really. I mean, leather I guess can break down, but
Yeah.
you already bought it, you already purchased it, it's already been done. So now you just move forward and maybe don't buy stuff like that again. Don't spend the money on it. But to tell people to get rid of it and not wear it when they've already purchased it is it's almost like saying, well, are you going to pay for their next pair? Because
Yeah.
it's and it's almost like pulling hairs, splitting
Yeah.
hairs to really say who's real vegan. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's how my
Yeah.
journey began. My journey began because it wasn't anything to do with my health, the environment, love for animals. It was more about me having the morals and not wanting to be a hypocrite calling myself a Rasta.
Yeah. I can relate so much to the boot story because that happened to me with my wallet when I first became vegan. Someone asked me the same thing, and the same thing. I was like, man, I'm not gonna eat this shit. Like, why are you asking me? Like, it's not food, right? But yeah, and then obviously now, like you mentioned, as something ends, you buy a vegan version of it, right? Like
Right.
if your belt ends, you buy a vegan belt wallet, and now it's like shoes. But I feel like there's limits to it, right? Like I'm not gonna go change all the seats in my car. That would be super
Right.
expensive
Right.
for me to do
Right.
that, right? So you just you do the best that you can whenever it makes sense
Exactly.
to change it, because I think it would
Exactly.
be impossible to change all of it fully.
Because I if you think about insects and what have you, people talk about, oh, don't kill anything and da 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 da. You walk around, you fall on the grass, you may have killed an insect just by doing that.
You're just walking around, you're killing an ant. Yeah, there's always something. So yeah, do the best that you can ultimately.
Correct.
So that's interesting. So you're already into training, you're already into being able to shape your body a certain way. You transition to veganism. Did that when you were vegetarian, were you like focusing on eating more protein, and how did you pivot when you became vegan?
So yes, I was because I was reading all about the bodybuilding, right? So studying
Yeah.
and seeing that these guys are eating a lot of eggs. So I ate a lot of eggs
Yeah.
when I was vegetarian, and then
Did you
once I
ever
went vegan,
drink them? Did you do the rocky shit? Did you ever drink them?
no, ew. Mm-mm.
Oh
I
man, I
did
tried
straight.
that for a while.
I think I did them mainly hard boiled.
Okay.
That's what
That's
I
a
did
lot.
because
That's a lot of hard-boiled eggs.
it was easier to travel with. I would take it as lunch to school when I was younger, and so
Dude,
I
I bet
had
your
all of
bag
that.
smelled good when you were at school.
I had that, and I ate a lot of rice because that's what they talked about: rice
Yeah.
and eggs. That's what they ate a lot, and veggies. I did a lot of like broccoli and stuff like that because
Hot sauce
those are the
mustard.
main, and spinach and things like that. Those are the main food that people eat.
Yeah.
And so when I made the switch, I didn't even think about it. I think I just started because the only thing I had back there was tofu. And then
Yeah.
they had a lot of tofurkey products, where, you could do the tofurkey deli slices, you could do the tofurkey blah, blah, blah. But I made a lot of tofu, rice, and those were and I used to do like, I remember in college, I did a lot of the pre-made like burritos that have tofu in them, tofu and beans. And because I was in
Was it the
college. So
Amy's ones?
yeah. Oh, man, it was so good.
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah.
love them.
Had a
I ate
few of
them
those. Yeah.
all the time. I would get some hot sauce and heat them up, pour the hot man.
Like four or
That
five hundred
saved me.
calories each.
What's that?
Aren't they like 400 or 500 calories each?
Yeah,
They're pretty dense.
yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
But I did a
So
lot of tofu. Tofu was my saving grace, and all I did, back then, is I just decreased my calories, not by
okay.
counting or tracking it. I just by looking. Okay, I'm gonna eat less, and the more I saw my body getting the way it wanted to be, I just kept doing it, and that's how I started. You know, 'Cause when I went to my first competition, I remember going to. I was working in it as an engineer at the time, and one of my not colleagues, one of my friends from high school, he called me and said, "Hey, a buddy that we know mutually is competing in Atlanta within 2008." So I decided I was surprised because had never known him to be into bodybuilding. And so they're like, yeah, he started competing and everything. So he had been competing for a little time doing the natural bodybuilding competitions. And so I decided to go watch him because I was pretty much excited about seeing something like that, and plus seeing him. And so here I thought I looked good because I was working out still, but wasn't competing or anything.
Yeah.
And when I saw him on stage and he actually won that day, it inspired me because he looked the way I was thinking of how I would like to look. He had
Mm.
that superhero look. And I said, "Oh man, okay, I gotta compete." I don't want to live a life and say I wish wish I did or I should have. Because I didn't want to go. I remember hearing something that said, "Don't go to your deathbed saying I should have." And so I said, "Hey man, I want to compete." I remember one of his first responses was, "But you're vegan." I was like, "Okay," because I didn't see any difference, Max. I saw
Yeah.
I was able still to build muscle. I didn't think there was a problem. And he was like,
Yeah.
okay. So he helped me with posing, told me to eat less bread, eat less of the deli slices because I had too much sodium. At the time, I thought that was, oh, okay, that's right. And I remember getting on stage, and even though I thought I looked good, I look back at those pictures now. Oh, wow. I came in
Yeah.
third place, but man, I make those pictures back then look crazy right now. Even though
Yeah.
somebody would say, man, you look good back then.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how did you refine your process as you moved along?
Once I started really studying and I learned about Lane Norton and those methods, that's when I was like,
Yeah.
macros.
Yeah.
And not drink a lot more water. When I started doing that, it was night and day. Cause I remember
Yeah.
I went to a competition because I had in 2013 I won every show I did, and I did 7 shows.
Wow.
And I remember going to that was when they did the first vegan bodybuilding competition. Well, actually, it was just plant built. You ever heard of
Yeah.
them? So the first plant built, I was a part of that, and they did the competition in Texas. And I was a pro in many organizations. So this was WNBF, and they wouldn't allow
Yeah.
me to compete as a pro from another organization because they said, "Well, you have to get your pro card with us." And I was like, "Really?" So I went to do the amateur, and I remember people in the audience was looking at me like, who is this guy? Why is he looks like a pro. And I remember I was married at the time. My wife said to them, he is a pro. They just won't allow him to compete in a pro class in this show because he didn't get it in their organization. And I easily won that class. And so
Yeah.
then I had to do the overall, and I easily won the overall. Got a pro card in that show that year. And I was just like, okay. So that's when that night before that show, I remember eating a burger at Aldo's. It was a vegan restaurant, a vegan food truck, and I remember that all the other bodybuilders were like, "What are you doing? Why are you eating a burger? I can't believe
Yeah.
Tori's going to eat a burger," and I did. And next day I looked great. Where
Yeah.
they were like all starving and like, "Oh my
Dehydrated
gosh."
and yeah.
Yes, I got up there and looked
Nice.
really good.
Yeah, because everyone is suffering, like again, cutting out their water, doing super like basically they're doing no carb, right? They're just like vegetables and meat pretty much is what they're on, low sodium as well. Yeah. Do you
And then
is
it's interesting because and they feel like, and then the next day they're like, man, I look so great because the body is used to sodium and water and
yeah,
fat and carbs. So you just changed everything up just to get on stage, and it's like, I don't know what to do. Sometimes what it does is a whole water, and it makes you
yeah,
look kind of flat and, kind of watery. People start sweating on stage. You're like, what happened? Then the next day they look so good, and they're like, man, I look so good because that happened to me. My show in 2011, Max, I was super shredded, so lean because I did the whole water 2 gallons on Monday, gallon and a
yeah,
half Tuesday, gallon Wednesday, half a gallon on Thursday, a liter on Friday, cut it by 4, and then You barely drink water on Saturday, the day of the show.
Yeah.
And I was so shredded. And I remember seeing a bodybuilder about 3 weeks prior to that show. He trains me, and he told me, he said, "Man, you're so shredded. You need to eat. It's not you're not gonna get fat." And I was like, "What? No, I'm not. I'm not doing that." Because he was used to enhanced athletes, and
Yeah.
so, but he told me, he said, "You should eat. You're not gonna gain any weight." And I didn't listen. So I came in third, but according to everybody else, they said you would have won. You should have won. And I remember eating that night, and the next day I looked so good. I was like, damn, we
Yeah.
should have listened to him.
Yeah. That's why he's the coach. Hey, I get it, man. I butted heads with my first coach too. Yeah, I just remember this as you were talking about water and the gallon and kind of decreasing it as the week progressed. I was drinking water out of the cap of a water bottle, or when I was like really thirsty, he's like, put it in your mouth, like rinse it
Spit
around
out.
and spit it back out. Yeah, you're not allowed to drink it. You'll hold water. You'll look flat on stage. It won't look nice. Um, that's awesome, man. I'm happy I get to. I haven't nerded out about bodybuilding in a long time. I don't have people in my surroundings to talk about it. So I'm curious. Like, obviously, we talked about the cut and the fat loss and how you approach the competition. How do you deal with muscle building in the off season? Because, like you mentioned, you don't do like, hey, I'm just going to consume a shit ton of calorie, put on a bunch of fat with it, and trying to get bigger and stronger. So how do you your bulking season / improvement season for the next competition?
So we typically go with high reps, a lot of volume, and which scientifically has shown to build muscle just as well as low volume, heavy weight. It's just that you are doing less, causing less injury to shoulder, not shoulder, to joints in general, because you're not having this heavy weight pounding it. So I
Yeah,
typically do that, and my calories, I don't even really track in the off season as much as I do. It's really, I just kind of I like to maintain a specific look. So like I said,
yeah,
I like to stay within this 174 to 178 range. And because usually when I get over that 178 range, I'm like, ill. I don't like how I look. But
yeah.
I think to some other people, they think I look really great. So that's how I handle it, because I don't really consider it bulking. And I think if I really were to bulk the way that people say they do, I probably could get to 185. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
Would I like it? No. I would think, like, even now, I think my face looks kind of chubby.
So I was gonna say is once you notice your physique kind of getting a bit fluffy, you're like, we're gonna cut back on the Ben and Jerry's ice cream. We're
Right.
gonna cut back on the. I was in Florida recently. You've been to Planta before,
Of course.
dude? That nacho plate with the homemade nacho sauce.
So good, yo.
Oh man, I ate it every day when I was there.
I didn't realize how good it was. I mean, I hadn't had it in a long time, and I went back pretty recently. I was like, "Damn, this is good." But I think they also modified the recipe somewhat, but it was really good.
Yeah, yeah, but the sodium is jacked up in there too. But yeah, it's a good dish. So you just
Yeah,
basically
and that's
clean
why
out
you
the
you
food.
got to keep your water on so you can balance out those things.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, basically you just kind of cut back on the enjoyment of certain foods when you start to get a bit too fluffy.
Correct. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
All right. No worries. Well, I know it's late for you, so I want to ask you a few last questions. So one of them is, people have this idea that they can just put on an absurd amount of lean muscle mass when they're deep into a deficit. So like what is the focus when you're in a fat loss stage as a natural person, natural athlete?
Oh, I think that's maybe visually it looks like it because you're starting to see them more.
Yeah.
but but yeah, that's, I'm not gonna say that's impossible, but that's not the focus at the point. As you start to drop body fat to get prepared for a competition, you're looking to minimize, like you just mentioned, minimize as much muscle loss as possible. That's why you kind of take your time as much as you can, and keep the protein high and what have you.
What's kind of the guideline that you go for protein wise in a fat loss body recomp stage?
I think it's about 1.7 to about 2.2
Per
kilograms
kg?
per gram. in order to maximize. So let's say, for example, right now I'm doing about 200 grams of protein.
Okay.
And usually as I get closer to the show, I get probably down to 185 as far as grams. And that's it. My
Yeah.
carbohydrates are, of course, like, carbohydrates tend to drop, but we like to keep our fat up because the fat tends to keep me more full in the sense of satiated. So therefore,
Yeah.
I'm not with that always hungry type of mindset.
Do you track when you do your fat loss? Or are you
Yeah,
still eyeballing at that point?
I track meticulously. Like anything that goes in my mouth, I track it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just want people to hear the importance of that protein plays in a muscle building phase and in a body recomposition phase. And that,
Man,
yeah.
and it's funny because I never used to, but I think especially when you're a bodybuilder, it's important. Now, if you're an average person who just likes to work out and do things and want to lose fat, you may not have to be so meticulous because you can do a lot more other types of things and lose weight. But me,
Yeah.
I'm looking to lose fat, which is inches, and
Yeah.
maximize muscle retention.
Yeah. And I think that's what people need to hear ultimately. Because a lot of people are like, they want to drop weight, but they get to that point and they're like, man, I look skinny under all of this. I'm like, you could have looked better. If you hit your protein and you strength train, you could have looked a lot better than you do
Right,
now.
right.
Yeah. That's why most people end up looking skinny fat. When they drop a significant amount of weight, they just end up looking skinny fat at the end.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's kind of like now with all the fat loss drugs out there. That's what you're going to
yeah.
create.
Yeah. With the Ozempic.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just, you heard of Ozempic face? You ever heard of that?
No.
So people lose weight so fast that the elasticity in the skin and the face doesn't have time to catch up. So they get like droopy in their
Really?
face, like in the
That makes
eyes and the
sense.
cheeks. Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's nuts, man. And people are spending, someone was telling me it's like, it can go from 500 to $1,000+ a month on
Yes,
those drugs that people
exactly.
are spending.
I know people that are taking it right now that they spend about 1,000 a month.
Yeah. That's nuts. Yeah. Cause then once it stops or you run out of money, man, you're just back to being chunky after. Like
Yeah,
there's no
because
stopping
I
it.
I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens when you stop. Like, if all it's doing is suppressing your appetite to eat, what happens when you stop? Like now you have to be disciplined.
Yeah. Well, you have to, there's actually like know some people that have stopped it. Like the hunger just comes back, but hungrier, man. You've been nutrient deficient for the whole time you were on it. You've been basically severely under eating. Your body's like, dude, give me nutrients, give me energy. And so you actually end up eating more. It's like, yeah, if people do a bodybuilding competition and at the end they just kind of do the typical reaction of going nuts and just eating everything in front of them. Yeah, you'll put on
Right.
some weight. The body can handle it. Yeah.
That's very true.
So I want to ask you, man, to end on this. You're writing a book. You're
Yes.
working on writing a book. You're realizing it's a lengthy process. So what is the book about? And tell us a little bit more about it.
So, a lot of times, because I've already have the proposal prepared, so I've been shopping it around to different publishers and agents and what have you. And, usually when you get into that phase, not everybody's going to believe in you. You have to truly believe in yourself because my book is going to be more of a memoir style as well as about my nutrition, vegan nutrition, and workouts, my workouts, and things of that nature. So, what was told to me by one or two people is the memoir style is only really good if you're super famous, uber famous, like The Rock or somebody like that, you know. But you have to believe in yourself because not everybody's going to see your vision, and that's how I want to portray. I want to leave a legacy, but I want to start by doing something where I can help people because I've always had this inert desire to help people as much as I possibly can. Like I was gonna be late here because someone was on the side of the road and it was kind of blocking traffic, but it was just a car with two guys, and I was gonna ask them, "Hey man, why don't we just move it off the road? I'll help you push it." But I said, I can't do that. I'll be late to this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Again, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Maybe they weren't. Who knows? Who knows what could have happened? But yeah, ultimately, I think it's a great idea. At the end of the day, a lot of the things that have had a huge impact seemed like crazy ideas at first,
Yeah.
right? And I think, I don't know, I have the idea of writing a book too, but it's like not on my plate right now. There's too much. But like, if you write this book, the goal is like, yeah, New York Times bestseller, all that stuff is great, but man, what if that shit picks up in 10 years?
Yeah.
Like
And that's what I
it
hear.
doesn't
Like,
matter.
it 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 could pick up later on.
Yeah. Is it Cal Newport? You ever read his book, Deep Work?
No.
Great book. Very like the guy doesn't have social media. Like he just came on YouTube with a podcast. Sells like 1.5 million books a year. Never made New
What?
York's Time bestseller. Never hit like those top charts of anything. And at $10 a book, man, that's 15 million a year in sales, right?
Yeah.
Right there. So so it's obviously it's more than $10 for the book, but he's making a significant amount of money with no social media. It picked up later on. So it's just the impact is there, the tool is there. Then it's just about getting people to access it as you grow your brand, as you compete, and you do all of these things.
And what is it? What's that person's name? I definitely have to check that out. Or text it to
Yeah,
me or message me.
yeah, I'll message it to you after. But yeah, great. Changed my life in terms of productivity and how I work and how I get things done in a very efficient manner. So I have more time for myself with my wife to kind of do other things. Because working is
God,
great, but we work to have the time freedom to do the things that we want to do. All right.
very
Yeah.
true.
So, Tori, man, I always like to end on words of wisdom. So, is there anything that you'd like to pass off from the audience? Again, it could be related to something you went through today or something that you've experienced in the past 10 years.
So many things. One, don't overthink. And what I mean by that is we as people tend to overthink something that can be so simple because truth is simple. If it's simple, if it's true for me and you, that's truth. If you have to change it in order for it to fit a narrative, that's not really truth because it has to be universal for both of us. Fail faster. I saw that and I was like, that's so very true. I think a lot of times we're scared to fail because we just, it's unknown. Therefore, we are overthinking. Instead of just let your thoughts be and kind of follow your instinct because I, something as simple as I was going to take a left to leave the gym today to get to the light, but I know that light can be long. So I was going to take a right, go all the way around to the other street and probably be able to get there faster. And I sat there and then my instinct said, just take a left. I took a left, the light changed to green. So I just listened to myself and it went the way that I was expecting it to go. But when we overthink and say, man, that's not going to blah, 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 we almost think ourselves out of it. And we tend to do that too much. Lastly, don't take things personally. It's very hard to do because we almost feel like we're always under attack or someone is doing something that's personal to us when most of the time it has really nothing to do with you. Most of those people are in their own world and they just don't feel that other people matter. And it's not directed at you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
don't take things personal.
Yeah. And they're going through their own shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful words to end on. Brother, thank you very much, man, for taking the time to jump on. Excited to have you back on once a book is
Yes.
ready and
Yes.
do a book giveaway with it. I wish you all the best in your upcoming competition. And for everyone listening, I'll link all of Tori's. I know you have a YouTube channel, your Instagram,
Yes.
your website. If people want to inquire for coaching and some of the work that you're doing. And we'll see everyone in the next episode.
Thank you, man. Thank you for your patience and your time. I know it took a minute, but like you said, things happen in the time that they're supposed to.